folks, it is the end of 2016, and wow, do I have a lot of things to be thankful for. First off, I'd like to personally thank you all for listening and tuning into the show. And yes, I said personally, so if you tweet at me at AEBeats, I will send you a personal thank you video. That is how much I really appreciate your time. So to wrap up the first season of Missing Chapters, I was excited to get today's guest back on the show. Yes, you heard me correctly, back on the show. And no, this isn't a guest that I've had on before. This is somebody new, and here's how that particular story goes. When I first started up this podcast after leaving my college radio gig on my show Indie Movement, which you can check out at aebeats.com, #shameless plug, I worked with a buddy of mine to come up with the concept for the show. I wanted to feature folks that work in the entertainment industry, but wanted to focus in and discuss something interesting about them that may or may not align with what they're known for. So for example, Shadow Rabbits came in and we talked about how they started off as a video-based project and not a band. Max Franco came in to talk about improv. Via Luna came in and talked about what it's like to be an all-instrumental band, right? Interesting things that you may have not known about them before. So when I was searching for who I wanted to be the very first guest on this show, I wanted to have a guest on who had a high passion for audio engineering like I do, so I could talk comfortably while figuring out how the podcast world worked. So lo and behold, a few days after my search started, I got a Facebook friend request from Gabe Fry, and I knew nothing about Gabe at that time, but figured that if he friended me, we most likely had something in common. So I then did a little bit of research on Gabe, and it turned out that he too was an audio engineer, somewhat new to the Kansas City scene. I checked out his projects, and they sounded fantastic, so I thought, cool, Gabe seems like a solid dude, and he obviously has talent, and we can talk about something that I'm comfortable with. This is a win-win. So I headed out to his studio, Kimura Recordings in Lee Summit, Missouri, to chat about audio engineering. Now, when I got there, I was completely unprepared, outside of just a few questions I wrote up. Now, first off, I assumed that I could use his gear to record the episode without asking. Not only was that extremely rude of me, but it required Gabe to rewire a few mics and inputs to accommodate me. Now, being the gentleman that he is, he gladly obliged, but still, that is not cool. Secondly, my intention was to do some type of NPR journalistic story with interview soundbites interweaved throughout the episode, but I did not know the very first thing about how to set up the questions, and I do not know shit about journalism. So after stumbling through the beginning of the interview, we eventually started to catch some steam and talk for a few hours. I then brought the interview back to my studio and worked on the edit. About 2 weeks later, I realized I didn't have much I could work with and sheepishly asked Gabe if we could redo it. Again, since Gabe is a stand-up individual, he was totally cool with that. But deep down inside, I felt really terrible because one, I hate wasting people's time, and two, in the recording world, time equals money, so that was a double whammy. However, in the end, everything worked out and we were able to get the interview rescheduled, and I showed up prepared this time. Go figure. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into my interview with audio engineer Gabe Fry, who runs, again, Kimura Recordings, based out of Lee Summit, Missouri. Gabe is going to help us uncover the missing chapters on how he gets such an amazing sound on his records while tracking and mixing out of a room in a small business building. So here we go.
Chapter 1.
Oh, man. All right. We just kind of get these things rolling. We just have a conversation.
Cool.
So it's pretty cool that it's kind of coming around full circle because you're the first person I started with, and I completely fucked that interview up. And now you're going to be the person that's wrapping up my season, man. So thank you. Thank you for being willing to have me back after I made an ass of myself the first time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for finding value enough to talk to me to come back. So I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, very cool. So tell me a little bit about yourself, man. Gabe Fry, audio engineer, previous musician, probably still playing music, man. Just putting up awesome stuff online through Kimura Recordings, which, by the way, when I was trying to cut down that initial interview we did, and you were like, Kimura, like the jiu-jitsu, that was fucking awesome. Because as you know now, like we're both huge MMA fans.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, really pretty much my focus is, all in the studio nowadays, but played in the Kansas City area for about 10 years, playing in a lot of different metal bands, and played in From the Shallows from Ohio that was signed to Tribunal Records for a short stint. And so I've definitely done the band thing, and I decided to make the switch to, recording audio about 4 years ago. And so, that continues to be my focus, and, just trying to get better every day and be a solid solution for, not just local bands, but any bands that, across the world. Like I just did a mix for a band in Italy.
What?
And
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Like just the internet being able to send files and mix and master remotely. I want to say I want to be a great asset to the Kansas City area and help the bands step up their quality and get commercial quality recordings for super affordable price. But it doesn't have to be limited to just here. It can be pretty much anywhere. So
how did that work? They just did you reach out to them or did they reach out to you?
I believe I reached out to them initially. I do a lot of networking on like Facebook and other social media platforms. But what I typically do is just try to build relationships with different musicians. I follow a lot of the Facebook groups, the metal Facebook groups and all the subgenres and things like that. So I'll add a handful of guys every day and try to get to know some new musicians. And I think through that came the opportunity to work with a band like that. So definitely really honored to be able to have a band from overseas trust me with their music. And
how'd that currency conversion work out when you gave them the quote?
There wasn't really an argument or anything like that. I never checked to see how much they were paying on their
side of the pond.
Yeah, but they were happy to pay it, and actually they paid me like a couple weeks in advance before I even started the mix. I mean,
oh wow!
So they really had,
it's like night and day from American bands.
It kind of was, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So
did they just send you the tracks and just give you kind of an idea of what they were going for? And
yeah, exactly. So basically, as I was talking to them about, I always ask every band, what they're shooting for sonically for, their mix, and I usually, buy 2 to 3 physical records just because the quality's better. That way when I'm referencing, the tracks for the mix, it's the highest quality reference, and they gave me a couple bands that they wanted me to reference for the record, and it was kind of tough because I was initially told, they wanted everything sonically from one record. They wanted a similar style to, and so I was like, cool. So I bought the record, and thankfully I always get antsy. I want to start, early,
right.
But this time I didn't, thankfully, because right before I got the tracks to mix, the drummer sent me a private message, and he's like, hey, I want my drums to sound like this other band, and it's a completely different mix. And, I'm just like, okay, well, then I put out the disclosure, like, I will do my best to converge these two worlds, but,
yeah,
we'll see what we get here. Like, one was kind of like a deathcore band, and then one was like a ambient djinty band, and so it was just kind of different sounds. So it was tough. It was actually a pretty tough mix to really nail. But I'm actually not even finished with it yet. But we're real close, and they're definitely happy with it. It's just a few little volume tweaks and things like that. So they like the sounds of the instruments and all that kind of stuff. So it actually ended up working out just fine. So
that's always tough too when you're audio engineer and they send you a private message. I think I picked up on that. So it's like they don't want to internally talk about it and come to you collectively.
Yeah,
everyone wants their own different sound.
Yeah,
that can be tough.
Yeah, I was definitely given advice on this by a couple of my mentors. They always said, make sure whenever they send you anything about the recording, make sure it's all from one person, same person.
Right.
And so I didn't really take that advice this time. I went ahead and just talked to them both independently, although I did communicate. I was getting a message from the band page and then one from the drummer. When the drummer told me what he wanted, I would relay that information to the band page just to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And so it worked out, But I think, I don't know, it was definitely one of those things where I'm like, okay, in the future, I definitely need to be careful with that. But, at the same time, it's like, I figure, I don't know, I just had a gut feeling in this case that either way, I probably would have got another message or something. I would have been told to, follow what the drummer said after I'd probably already done the mix. So
and that's tough too, because drums are like the foundation for the entire track. So
exactly. So that was the toughest part, is the drummer wanted his drums a certain way, which absolutely sets up, the rest of the record or the mix sonically. And so if you have drums, typically what I do is I match the high end of the guitars to the high end of the cymbals, and then I match the bass with the low end of the kick drum. And so that's sort of like, it sets a precedent for those two, frequent sides of the frequency spectrum. So that was, that was the challenging part was, figuring out how to pick tones that, were similar to, the shells and the high end of the cymbals from this drumming, or from the drummer's record he wanted me to reference. And then, it's like, okay, so do I now blend in the guitars and then try and shape what I have now around the EQ, the final EQ of this other record the band wants me to reference? And so I just did my best to, find a good compromise between the two. I figured out, the guitars that were used on the record the band wanted. So I just replicated those same heads and cabs. And, it turned out fine. You're never going to get a record that wasn't recorded by the same people through, in the same room to sound like a completely different record. Right. It's never going to be like that. But, at least you can know what they want, sort of the vibe and the feel and the balance that a band wants from one record, to reflect on theirs. And so it typically works out pretty well.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because when I work with bands too, it's like, okay, yeah, I do the exact same thing. Send me a couple of records. And so it's like, okay, the tracks that you guys are going to send me to mix are probably not going to be sonically equivalent to what you're referencing. But, for example, I'm working with a band right now and they reached out and I was like, well, give me some examples. And it was like Led Zeppelin, 21 Pilots, Foo Fighters. I'm like, okay. So what I took away from that was, okay, you guys want big drums. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You just kind of have to read between the lines sometimes and then, just kind of pick your battles. And everybody has their own language, when it comes to like audio terms and things too, right? Like some people like colors, I want this to sound blue and you're just like, what, yeah. I don't know what that means to you. It probably doesn't mean the same thing it means to me. So that's what's so great about referencing records is it sort of, you're both speaking the same language. And to ask, investigate a little bit more, about what do you like about this record? What do you want me to focus on, on this record? How do you want me to mold your record around, into something more similar to this kind of a thing, So it's definitely a good solution there. So
yeah, man. And what I think is really cool about your recording setup, so your entire studio is in a room in an office building.
Yep.
And you do everything in the box, but it sounds fucking amazing.
Oh, I appreciate that, man.
So for the band over in, was it France?
Italy.
Italy, okay.
Yeah.
Did you draw all the drums in?
No, they did that, but they wanted me to, pick the sounds and do the velocities as well.
So they sent you a MIDI drum track?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and the bass is MIDI as well, actually.
The bass is MIDI too?
Yeah.
How do you get the stroke sound in a MIDI bass?
With metal, you can definitely get away with a MIDI bass just because, there's a lot of times it's thought of in two ways. You're holding down the low end, and what a lot of engineers will do is they'll basically split the bass track in two. So from, zero to not zero, but 250 hertz, all your low end, you're going to dial in a tone for that complements your kick drum, the low end of your kick drum. And then there's like a copy of the bass, and it's split from 250 up to 3 to 4K, however much high end you want. That's usually where I cut off. But and that's going to blend in with the guitars. It's going to add some more mids. And what I typically do is just I've been using a lot of impulses lately for cab simulation on the guitar. So I'll use probably the same cab impulse that I use for the guitars, but I'll distort it differently. I'll run it through a different profile on my Kemper. So you're not really, using the bass as anything more than support for the low end and the high end, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of how a lot of times it's looked at in rock and metal, and it's an approach that I've adopted myself. So you're not so much worried about the individual picks and the round robins and making sure that you're getting a real convincing performance. It's actually great because there's a lot of consistency, which is huge with metal when things are going so fast,
right.
and this note's way louder than the other, and depending on your pick attack and just the nature of bass, it creates a consistency in the low end that really helps ensure you can get the most energy out of that frequency spectrum.
And you mentioned impulse earlier. What's that?
Impulse responses is basically like I'm very bad with science and the science of recording, but basically, it's you're recording the frequency response of the cabinet from a neutral sound. Basically, you send signals through the cabinet, and it records, the frequency response of that cabinet, and it changes with the microphone as well. So it's basically just taking a snapshot of that the sound of that cabinet in that room with that microphone. The quality's really varied a lot over the years. I tried him out for a long time, and I was never happy with him. And I finally found, a company called Ownhammer that has some impulses that I can't beat right now. And so I really dig them, but it's basically just a clone of a cabinet of the frequency. And so you can take an amp head, you could run it direct, into your interface or whatever. And you want to make sure you have a load box, so you don't blow it. Because if you run ahead, if you don't have a cabinet, some kind of, again, I suck with the science, but I think it's like some kind of, to be able to handle the resistance or
the impedance.
Yeah. Impedance. And you're gonna blow, possibly your transformer, if you're lucky, a tube or something like that. So, and I've done that before. I had to learn my lesson there. But it's a great way to record guitars with low volume. You're not really missing a lot of the benefits of having a cab mic'd up in a real room, unless you're going for something, sort of artistic and different,
right.
Or you want to experiment or whatever. But
using the room as an effect instead of just a recording
platform.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or if there's a mic that you love that nobody's done an impulse of, or of course you can do them yourself, then I guess you're compromising in that sense. But yeah.
Cool. So walk me through the setup that you got here, man.
So we'll just start with drums. I record drums on a Roland TD20. I've got, I think, 6 cymbals, 4 toms. I've got a Trick Bigfoot double bass pedal, which is, one of the best on the market right now. And basically the reason I do that is, records these days are just so sample heavy now that, there's not a lot of, there's not too much to be lost, in my opinion. Recording is all subjective. What you like may not be what I like, and vice versa. And, I actually have come to really enjoy the sound of the samples, the control. And if samples are, going to be your primary sound for your record anyway, which they are in a lot of cases, why not, save some time and give yourself full flexibility with an E-kit? Because you're still getting the feel from your drummer as he's playing. The pads and are picking up the dynamics as your drummer is playing, and you can, modify that to an extent you want to. If you want more dynamics, you can decrease the sensitivity of the hit so that there's more, more dynamics depending on how hard they hit and whatnot. But also, I don't have the most perfect room. And so this is sort of my best solution to get the best drum sounds that I can, which, like you said earlier, is the foundation for your recording. So you want to make sure that foundation is as high quality as possible, because everything else conforms to that drum sound. Like we were saying earlier, the high end of the cymbals and the low end of the kick drum. There's so many things that can go wrong, in the middle of a rushed recording session because budgets are low. And if you're on the clock, maybe you aren't able to find that kick drum sweet spot,
right.
with the mic you've got.
Yeah.
Or, maybe the drummer has cracked cymbals, but he's married to them. You're just not going to get the best sound just due to whatever
you're working with at
yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
exactly.
And it's not like back in the day when people had huge budgets and they're like, we'll go right in the studio. It's like,
exactly.
Well, you got to have pre-production done, get in the studio, you got to nail it and get out, or else even more with like indie bands, because they're such on tight budgets.
Right.
So saving that time, absolutely, I 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. So it makes my life easier, which means I have more energy to invest in the performances, which are number one in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But also we have the flexibility to change out anything in the kit that isn't vibing or isn't, appropriate for the record. That's the other huge thing is, whatever drum kit a drummer brings in may or may not be ideal for that sound. It's it could have been a drum set that a drummer bought 3 years ago when he wasn't even playing metal, and now he's in a metal band, and it's like, well, these shells really aren't punchy,
right?
And they're not these aren't the right heads, and there's just
your drum's out of tune.
Yeah, that too. I mean, there's just so many factors. So this to me is a solution that sort of pretty much guarantees a professional drum sound for your record. It's not the most analog and it's not the most organic approach to recording, but what it is it's consistent and reliable and very quality. So
absolutely. And I mean, people got to realize these days people consume music through earbuds,
right?
Not through
or
high-end,
phones.
or phones,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah, so getting super artsy with it, spending a ton of time in the studio, getting the right room, all that.
Yeah,
sometimes it's just lost on the listener. So
totally, man, totally. So that's what we do for drums, and then guitars are going through the Kimura Profiling amp, which is another digital solution. The Kimura is
baller as shit.
I love this thing, man. It sounds so real. I mean, it's amazing. Like if you run an amp head into this, and then you run the microphone cable into it as well, and you do an A/B between what the Kimura profiled and your rig in real time, going back and forth. It's so undistinct. It's like you maybe lose a little bit of low end, but you want that anyway for a guitar.
Yeah.
In a mix. It sounds better actually a lot of times.
Yeah, dude,
it's
your mix
crazy.
sound great. Yeah, the guitar sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so the other great thing about it too is you burn your ears out really, really, really fast. Having your head up to a blaring cabinet, trying to find the sweet spot with a microphone, right? And so the great thing about it is the speed of change. If I'm dialing in a tone, I'll pick an impulse, and then I'll just kind of roll through some different heads. Just real quick, there's software called Rig Manager, and it's great because I can just go type in the amp head I want, the name of it. It'll pull up all the profiles I have of that head, and I can just go through. I can just click or hit down on my keyboard and then enter, and it'll switch on the Kimura immediately, and I go to a different head, and it's amazing. You have all these snapshots of different heads, and you find that tone that you like. So like with whatever impulse I have, find the right sound that I'm looking for, and then maybe I'll start changing the cabs after that just to see if I can find a better,
right?
And
having the flexibility to do that without being like,
yeah,
okay, come back in.
Exactly.
Put the cab in the same place, the mic in the same place.
100%, man. Like you get to stay in the same spot, and you get to have, critically listen with fresh ears.
Right.
And again, that's a time saver.
Yep.
It's a huge time saver. So the more energy that I have to work on a record, and the faster I can do it without compromise, of course, because there's certainly parts that I don't try to get done the fastest I can, like tracking guitars and vocals. I try to make sure those are all, done really well and not compromised. But just the speed of customization. And it takes time, because you have so many options that you cannot get anything done because you're like, well, what if I'm missing this combination or whatever? It takes time, but you got to learn to follow your gut and go and know when, okay, that feels right. That feels right. I'm going to go ahead and do that, reamp that or whatever. That's the other great thing about it is, tracking with a certain tone. If I end up changing the drums after we're done tracking, then I can just reamp again through the Kimura and get a completely different tone that complements a new drum sound if I had to do one or whatever. So
yeah,
the flexibility and the speed is just insane.
Chapter 2.
And how long did it take you to actually, because I hear a lot of successful audio engineers are like, okay, you just got to trust your gut, and comes a point in time where you're just like, yep, I know this.
Yeah.
How long did that take for you to get to that point?
Probably about 8 years, I would say. 8
years.
Yeah.
Of doing this full time.
Well, yeah, not quite full time, but I've been recording for about 8 years now, and I've definitely spent heavy periods while I was in a band, recording a record and trying to mix it and trying to learn. And, part of the reason that I decided to kind of make a choice to do one or the other was because I wasn't making the strides that I wanted to in the recording world. And so after making it my focus and doing what I can to practice as much as I can and learn as much as I can. It's tough for me. I'm a visual learner. I want to be good at reading, and I want to be good at digesting information and retaining it like that, but it's always so much better for me to see visually and to be able to break things down that way. The other biggest challenge I had is, paralysis by analysis, where you have too many options and you can't make a decision. Like, that's a real struggle for me because, I value creativity so much. I want to come up with the most original guitar tone and all this stuff. And so I was real stuck on that for years. But what I've come to find is And I don't think I could have learned this any other way, but just through repetition of failure and, to figure out that it's really about serving the song. It's really about serving, making tones that complement each other. And it's a multifaceted skill to be able to know when you're there. But yeah, I would say, the short answer is 8 years and the long answer is a lot of trial and error and these mentors that I had, and Joey Sturgis and Hale Levy and Joel Wanasek, being able to watch those guys and see how the things they sweat and the things they don't sweat, and just having an accurate ceiling to be able to hold my standards to, or I should say just an accurate standard to hold mine to, but just being able to see how those guys that work on a professional level, what they truly, prioritize, as far as, I guess in each phase of the recording and mixing process. And then the other side of that is just learning not to, just do everything you saw, from a live mix they did and don't think outside those parameters. I think that I couldn't have, done that mentorship at a better time because, I just was in such a good place to be able to be honest with what works for me and what doesn't, because there's things that work for them that doesn't work for me just because of, how it could be as simple as just the volume, the balance of how of my drums in one mix or the, sorry, I'm getting a little bit lost here, but
you're good.
Yeah.
It is difficult because like audio engineering, the first thing that a young audio engineer finds out is like, there is no secret sauce.
Right.
You got to figure it out on your own.
Right.
It's not going to be overnight. Like I thought, okay, I'm going to get this dope gear and then I'm going to make a fucking hit record.
Right.
And what I found out was like, nope, I'm going to make some shitty sounding recordings for about 5 or 6 years. And then, it's starting to sound a little bit better.
Right.
But yeah.
It definitely is a slow climb, because it takes time to develop your ears.
Yes.
It really does. And I'm definitely one of those people that is, thinks I'm a superhero and I can just, I can just somehow bypass that or climb that mountain way faster than I can than the average person or whatever. But that wasn't true for me. Like, it's funny because, growing up as a kid, I was really athletic and, nice little brag here. But, I just feel like in sports and things like that, I was able.
It comes naturally.
Exactly,
yeah.
100%. And so I didn't have to work as hard as a lot of other people to do things. But, the audio stuff, is just so different for me. And it's great because it makes me realize, it brings me down to earth real fast. It's just man. You have to develop these skills. You have to develop these senses. It takes time to develop your ears. It takes time to develop your intuition. I think that's another huge thing. It's just knowing what a good source sound is and how far away you are from that at pretty much all times. And, just knowing what a finished snare sounds like. And, you have all these perspectives that you have to gain. And you have to be able to balance all that while you're working on things. And, it just really takes time because it's so easy, too, to get discouraged when you're starting out or whatever.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember, I think the very first mix that I did, because it's always nice to, have, a buddy or a couple buddies you can send your mix to when you're first getting started and be like, hey, what do you think? Even when, at your level, hey, what do you guys think about this?
Right.
And so the hardest thing for me initially was okay, there's so many instruments in this mix. I don't understand where the resonant frequency is, where the second or third harmonics are. And so I ended up creating a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
And so because I have that engineering mindset and I'm like, hey, is this how you do this? Is this how you keep track of everything? There's 30 instruments and this is where I want them to sit. And the guy kind of laughed. He was like, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was just so much to take in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you're absolutely right. It just takes that time. And I watched a recent documentary on neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm.
You heard of that? Like being able to like rewire your brain?
I've heard about it. I know in like some of these podcasts and things I've been listening to, but yeah, go ahead.
And so that's exactly what we're doing as audio engineers and getting,
Right.
listening to your monitors and being able to say, okay, when is this mix done? You're rewiring your brain in a way that I don't believe that we're naturally have, because we can
Right.
experience audio, but being able to get behind, pull the curtain away and say, hey, what actually made me pay attention to this song?
Mm-hmm.
You got to rewire your brain in a completely different way, I feel.
Oh, it's that could not be more true. And it amazes me that someone ever did it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like magical
Yeah.
from an outside perspective. It's like, I don't know, it's such a weird, different world. You know, I mean, it's amazing to me that someone ever dove into it. When I really look back and think about it, yeah, it's that totally makes sense. You know, perfect example is like listening for harsh frequencies. That's something that I recently started getting way more sensitive to. I didn't even really know much about this concept. I've read it in books again, but when you see it in practice, that's when it clicks for me.
Right.
You know, and so I remember one of the first Skype critiques I did with A.L. Levy, and he was listening to one of my mixes, and he was saying that, I had some harsh frequencies going on in my cymbals, and I didn't quite know what he meant. And he didn't know that I didn't know what he meant, you know? So it was just like, it's hard to really know, exactly
Talking
where.
the same language.
Yeah, exactly. But once I saw it, and I overdid it the first few times after that, trying to figure out where those frequencies are. And I'm like, I'm doing too much, because it's funny. When you cut out a frequency, you can start to hear a buildup of another frequency, which isn't really a problem, but just because what you've been hearing, I'm trying to figure out a way to explain this articulately, but you cut out a frequency and the frequency next to it now stands out, and it's not a problem frequency, but it's just because that moment you changed, your signal in a way. If you take a break for 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, and come back and listen again, you won't even notice it. But it's just because that instance, that moment where you cut it, now you hear something that is like the weird thing about audio,
Yeah, dude.
So reprogramming your brain, when I'm listening now in the cymbals, I'm listening for whistle tones and weird harsh buildups, airy buildups that aren't pleasant, something that I never even knew existed until, somebody who's superior, than me.
They made you aware of it.
Exactly.
It's like blinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you don't pay attention, and when someone's like, "Hey, you're blinking a lot," then you start paying attention.
Right.
You're like, "Oh shit,
I
yeah."
am blinking a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. And then you start blinking more.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now I'm going to be paying attention to that the rest of this podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you really do have to sort of adapt to being that much more sensitive to what you're listening to, and it takes effort, and it takes somebody a lot of times telling you, who's been
Pointing
there,
it out,
yeah,
right.
exactly. So
Yeah, man. What I would say is the curse to that, though, is now when I hear one of my favorite bands put out a recording and it sounds shitty, in my opinion, I can't listen to it.
Yep.
It kills me because I'm like, I love this band, but I cannot get past all the high end.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I might get absolutely killed for this, but perfect example for me lately is like the new Meshuggah record. I know I see so much praise for it, and I'm like, this sounds boring to me. Like, it's really cool that they did it all, naturally and in the same room. This is the exception to heavy sample usage in metal and things like that. So it's like all raw tones, and Meshuggah is like one of the just most massive sounding bands.
Absolutely.
Across their discography. And to go to this now is just like, sonically for me, it just doesn't even hit close as how it normally does. It's just like, that's a perfect example for me. I respect it. Like, I think, I still love Meshuggah. I love what's Meshuggah about it, like just the weird, patterns and just the 8-string guitars and everything about that band is awesome. But, this one just doesn't have the impact for me, just because they try to make it more natural. And now we're in a time where that's not the standard. The standard is different, you know?
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's...
Dude, for me, it's the new Norma Jean record.
Oh, yeah?
Their last record, their drums sounded baller. And
Mm-hmm.
on this new record, it's just, there's no low end. I'm like, I want to hear Norma Jean with low end.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. I haven't listened to that record a whole ton, but I remember listening to it.
It sounds overcompressed, in my opinion. It does.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing about audio too. You know, it's just like there's no right or wrong. There's what you're feeling, what you like, and then ultimately the public decides. You know, like what is good and what is not. But that's what's so awesome about this too. Is just like when you are in control of how a record sounds. Oh, I mean, like that power is so great.
Yeah.
I like it more than writing a song anymore. I like being able to help shape a sound, you know, just because there's so many variables and so many ways to go with it. And I get to shape what I hear, you know, into I don't know. That's just such power to me. I just absolutely love it. Like,
It is, yeah. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's like you own the keys to that kingdom.
Right. Absolutely. No doubt about it, man. And you know, the more I do it, it's definitely something I'm more comfortable with now. And it's about taste. It's about, you know, that's what separates each and every engineer, aside from skill, is if you're hiring an engineer to work on your stuff, and you listen to their portfolio and you choose them, it's because you like their taste, right? You like the tones that they're choosing. You like the balance that they're, you know, creating. Like, that's just so huge. And so and thank God, like, with audio, all you have to do is just move a mic a centimeter over and you've got a completely different tone, you know?
Right.
Like, that's somebody's curse. It's also someone else's just, you know, key to having a different sound. It's just like, it's amazing how many different variables there are and different ways you can go about doing things. And like just yesterday, I was referencing like some modern rock tracks for a record or for a song I'm mixing right now. And I was just like really blown away by some of these frequencies that were building up in like the mid-range. And I was just like, whoa, like I've never heard, I don't know, somebody has some taste that they feel like they want all this mid-range. I didn't figure out what frequency it is. I didn't really pay that much attention, but it was just really cool to hear somebody's taste be like, this sounds right to me. When there's this much of this frequency built up in the mid-range, I went to another track and it was like completely different.
From the same artist?
No.
Oh, from a different artist.
Yeah. But it's just amazing because sometimes too, like if I'm referencing a record while I'm mixing and mine doesn't sound quite like it and I can't figure out how, you know, sometimes I get a little bit too hung up on trying to make it exactly like, you know, and you're just never going to get it there. But it just like when I listened back like to those two tracks back to back, and I was just like, it sort of made me feel better. Like I don't have to sweat that much.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's okay to be
deviate from the standard just a little bit.
Yeah.
If it works for the song.
Yeah. I mean, just how different those records sounded just almost made it sound like two different ballparks, right? And it very well could be the case, but both are commercial recordings doing very well, and they're so different. You know, it's just like amazing. So
I think it gets back to conditioning too, because that was the same genre though, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it was.
That completely blows the argument I was about to make that like people that listen to different genres expect different mixes.
Right.
But even the same
100%.
genre, yeah, I mean, I can understand that because when it hits radio, they go and they recompress it, right?
Right.
So I remember the first time that I heard one of my band's songs on the radio, I was like, our singer does not sound the same. Because the compression scheme that the radio was using was so different. Like his voice sounded deeper. It's like, this is fucking weird.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. And it, you know, it's just like, again, options. Like, do you choose to compensate for that?
Right.
Like, I mean, you
Exactly.
can. Like,
Yeah.
you can do all sorts of things, you know, while you're mixing to try and compensate. You know, some people master for iTunes or whatever.
Yeah,
and
like perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, you know, just there's all sorts of, you know, different things that you can get hung up on and caught up on, and you know, but really at the end of the day, it's just you know, trying to capture the spirit and the sound of what you're working on. You know, as long as you do that, you can't sweat all that other stuff, you know?
Right.
Like, you know, we live in such a critical world now that it's so easy to be, you know...
be an asshole.
Well, I was going to say to be discouraged when people come out and just rake you over the coals because it doesn't sound like the old Meshuggah record now, and it's just like
That's when people have too much time on their hands. They just come out the woodwork and just purposeless. Is that a word? Yeah. Purposeless comments. Just it didn't need to be said.
No, absolutely not. But have you ever seen Seinfeld's new show, Driving in Cars, or what is it? Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
I've seen like half an episode.
Yeah, I love those things, man. And he said on one of those, it was like I'm going to butcher this, but he said something along the lines of they were talking about when people are being critical to you at a stand-up show or whatever, that the guy that tells you to go kill yourself is actually saying two words come to mind, and I'm not sure which one it is, but it's either notice me, pay attention to me, or a cry for help or something like that.
Right.
Somewhere in between those two, right? But it was like, whoa, that like really clicked with me. Like, it's so much more about that person than it is you.
Absolutely. And I think that, I don't know if you've watched like the new South Park season. And so they have, and I haven't watched the last couple episodes, but I think what they're doing this season is they're making the entire season one long episode.
Oh, okay.
And so they're mixing in modern things, and they mixed in like internet trolls. And it was Kyle's dad. He's an internet troll, and they all think it's Cartman, but they end up following him, like why he's doing it, and you can get attention that way.
Right.
And that was his cry for attention. Exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the easiest way, and there's nothing noble about it, nothing productive. And like I've been that person though. I mean, I can honestly say like I definitely have regrets in the past about being like an elitist metal guy.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
I will totally admit that I was that guy.
Yeah. I think we all grow through that. I think the biggest difference is do you grow out of it?
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And and hopefully even like not because of societal pressure, like hopefully you get there by yourself.
Right.
Like you figure out, okay, I've been a jerk. Like this is just stupid and negative and pointless. And thankfully I've reached that point, but it is sad to see, so much of that going on. But it is a hidden message. It's definitely, if you can realize what that message is, if you can decode it, it's so much easier not to take it personal.
Right.
And that can be the difference between somebody putting out another record or hanging it up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and what gets me is I still have buddies that are elitists. I'm like, hey, did you check out that new Justin Timberlake song? And even though I know that they enjoy it, they'd be like, nah, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
It's not heavy. There's no breakdown. I'm like, come on, dude. We're 30.
Yeah.
Like, put that shit beside you.
Yeah.
Recognize good music for good music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, it's there's a tough guy. Oh man, I'm really blanking here. Characteristic, to portray, like to hold up.
The whole mentality.
Yeah.
Especially if you made the mistake of getting like 3 X's on your neck when you were when you were 20 because you were straight edge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's just like that macho, stuff is just, it really is just a burden to carry around, and it doesn't really make the world a better place necessarily, and it doesn't. You just lose. You're trying to be something you're not when you hold on to that forever, and you can't recognize, a quality song written or whatever. And again, taste. That's. I'm not going to say that everybody should, recognize that this is a great song, or whatever. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you're too macho to,
just admit, that's a dope harmony. I realize a person's not screaming,
right,
but they're hitting that high note, and it sounds amazing,
right?
And you're losing out on life experiences. Like I never thought I would enjoy going to Nebraska Furniture Mart to look for a fucking bed. But I did that this weekend, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just growing up, man.
Absolutely, man. Things change. Priorities change, and things that bring you joy change for sure. And you don't have to fight with all your might to not experience that or whatever. Just, it makes me think of when I was about 25, so that was almost 5 years ago. Like, once I hit 25, something weird was changing in me. Like, I think that's kind of when I started, I don't know, I just started wanting something different from the band thing, and it was weird and it was uncomfortable. It was like, I've put so much time and effort into this band thing that how can I hang it up even though something in me is changing, something in me is moving on, and I don't know, for some reason.
It's tough. It's hard to reappropriate what your dreams are. I had the exact same thing. I was like, I'm being a band. We're going to make it. This is going to happen. And then right around the same time, right around 25, I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. And it was like the hardest thing to realize and put past me.
Yeah.
And then I got into audio engineering just like you did. And I was like, you know what? I enjoy this a lot more than I enjoy fucking around downstairs in a basement, you know, with like people who might be serious, might not be serious. And it's like, okay, getting older, need to figure out what the hell I'm going to do.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
yeah, a lot of that comes into play.
Chapter 3.
So here's what I'm interested to know, too, because I run into this, and I guarantee that you probably run into this, too. When you're going and you're recording a band, and, you know, you want to do a fantastic job, make the mix sound good. With the setup that you have, you can probably make a lot of mixes sound fantastic. But if the band comes in or you go and you see them live and they suck, how do you balance putting out a record? Because I would imagine the last thing you want to do is put out something that they're never going to be able to pull off live, but you want to make them sound good at the same time. So how do you do that?
This, this happens a decent amount. So basically what my goal is, is just to help a band sound the best they absolutely can, no matter if it's the real them or if it isn't. I just have found that I go to sleep at night better just giving my best. Yeah. And I used to be that metal elitist guy that was like, if you can't play it live, then it shouldn't be, on the record or whatever, Right. And I've just kind of, I've adopted a different mentality. And you know what? Some of these pros are doing the same thing with some of these bands that are doing well, and selling a lot of records. It's actually the same situation. So what I do is, first of all, I'm well set up for that kind of a thing because drums, a lot of times I'll get a drummer in here who is not ready to record, their stuff on a professional level, which we're always shooting for here. Like I'm always shooting for commercial quality recording. I don't care what your skill level is, what you are. I will help you rise to that level the best that I can. And I feel like every band that comes in here leaves better. That's always the goal. So there's only so many things I can do, right? I can't make your picking, the tone in your hands sound great. I can try to show you some best practices, but that's something that's going to really take some time. So the number one thing is I would say performances, right? So thankfully we got the E-kit that I can, shape the performance into something much tighter and much more appropriate velocity-wise, with the impact and the energy. And so we're good on that always. I can always decipher whatever the drummer was doing, even if I have to go, okay, here's what he was going for, even though he totally blew it. But then when the time comes for guitars, if a guitar player cannot play in succession what he's trying to or well, then we break it down as much as we have to. I've gone note by note before.
Oh, really? Just punched them in note by note and put it back together?
Yeah. Whatever I have to do, I truly am dedicated to trying to make the most quality, product that I really can. And, do I feel like, I sort of helped a band, give us false idea of who they really are or whatever? I mean, I guess maybe, but standards are different. And I'll tell you one other thing that actually helps me a lot with this decision. I found a way to justify it to myself in sort of a strange way. Because of the demands of a band nowadays with social media and things like that,
right.
If you do that stuff right, I don't really know how you can dedicate the time you need to really nail your record. I mean, especially for some of these more technical bands and stuff that come through. When I think about that actually helps me a lot. The grind you have to do to build your fan base, to market your record after you're done recording it never stops. You have to always keep going. You have to be putting so much time into social media, building authentic relationships with fans and potential fans, the public, essentially, and pitching your record, paying for advertisements on Facebook. You just have to be putting so much energy. You have to be an entertainer now.
Yep.
It's not about music.
True, absolutely.
Yeah. So, like maybe they can figure it out along the way. I hope they do. And hopefully they can see, they have a moment of honesty when they're in here of like, okay, I'm not quite up to the,
Can't quite nail this sweep.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. That's like, if we aren't nailing the sweeps, we're probably just not gonna, that's one of those things that's just.
Take that out of the song.
Yeah, we'll put that a little bit lower in the mix there for that. But that's the thing. Like that's what I feel like separates myself, from a lot of these engineers around here is, I'm willing to get in there and really try to help a band, put in the time to make something great, and like I get it. Like some of these studios are $1 million studios and they have big overhead and they can't afford to work with a band, for no extra money to help them, get great performances and tones and things like that. But that's that's what I want to do,
Right.
Like I want to be able to pay my bills and that's about it. Like I just want to be able to, I don't need to get rich. I'm, trying to do this. Nobody really gets in the industry for money anymore. I hope they don't. But, I like my vision and my goal is to make great records and to help people, just unlock their potential. Like what is that record, that great record that's underlying all these challenges. And that's just my goal, So I put in extra work. I put in extra time. If we got to go note by note, I'll do it. Like I'll just, because I just am dedicated to a quality product. And
Right.
and
Because your name's on it too.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the other thing for sure. And I don't know. I'm a perfectionist. Like I'm just going to shoot for that quality product if I can. And I think that I can do it in a way too that's respectful and kind and people are comfortable here. And most of the time they understand what's going on and they really do appreciate it. And when they do, it makes that so much easier for me.
Right.
So I love it, man. I love just trying to put out a quality product and I love bringing that here because it's not always an option. You go to that $50, $75 an hour studio, well, you're going to run out of time really fast, especially if you're not ready.
Right.
Like, and you're going to go back home and you're going to listen to what you did that day and you're going to probably be really bummed because it doesn't sound like a record. It doesn't sound like, what you think it sounds like at practice when everything's so loud, but you can't really hear the fine details of what's going on. That's what recording is. It's everything under a microscope. And so helping bands, just really, really get micro with me and help, just perform every riff with precision and polish and just making that, holding yourself to the same standard that the pros do. It's the same thing. And anybody can do it. It's just doing it,
Right.
So
let's talk about your mentors.
Sure.
So how did you get hooked up with those amazing mentors?
So there's a website called Creative Live that does workshops for creatives. And I can't remember whose workshop that I saw was, I think it was probably one of AL's workshops. But it's a little bit blurry to me. But I remember watching one of the workshops on there. And then I think shortly after, I received an email from Creative Live who was sponsoring this endeavor by Joey Sturgis and A.L. Levy and Joel Wanasek. It was first called the Joey Sturgis Forum Podcast. And I had to be one of the first people to sign up for it. It was basically, an exclusive premium podcast and, Facebook group. And then they added a mentorship program. And so I ended up actually getting into the mentorship. I think probably because I was one of the first people in there, they upgraded my membership to that. And so I did that for about 14 months until I felt like that I just didn't really need it anymore, that I kind of wanted to either, start learning from some other people. Not that I couldn't while I'm listening, learning from them, but I don't know. I just kind of felt like my time was up there. So,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like, through watching these audio workshops, I found out about the opportunity, and it's growing a lot. Now it's called an unstoppable recording machine. They rebranded it, but yeah, it's an awesome thing they got going on there. They do a weekly podcast, and they also do this thing now called Nail the Mix, where they do a monthly mix of a song, and you get the raw files to mix yourself. They sort of have a mix off within the community, and there's like a first, second, third place, and whoever wins will get a prize, and it's usually like $500 value. Prize, if not more. I've been seeing some more expensive ones lately. So it's pretty cool opportunity for anybody wanting to learn, more about recording and learn from some pros. But yeah, I mean, like that was kind of, to me, not that I'm done learning or growing or anything like that, but it helped me fill those final holes I had in my game that were really separating my mixes and my work from, some of the commercial quality recordings that you hear, in the average, recording, in that world. So, yeah.
Was it tough when you were watching them? I'm assuming part of it was like watching them mix, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
Yep. So the problem I run into is when I go to sites like Pro Audio Files or different ones like that, and I watch them do a mix down. Since it's on YouTube, the compression on YouTube, and they're like, hey, this is what I did, and then hear the, A-B comparison. Sometimes for the real subtle stuff, I can't hear it. Did you run into that at all?
I don't know. I don't really think so. It wasn't a huge problem for me. I think that there's got to be some kind of loss there, right? But it's really going to depend on what you're listening on. Like, I don't know the size of your speakers, and obviously, like, your room is going to play a huge part in it too, if it's treated or not. Yeah, I felt like it was a pretty solid, and it may vary from stream to stream,
right?
How they're sending out the audio, to digitally. Like, I'm sure the quality of that is going to make a difference on the detail and. If you're hearing a already decently compressed signal being compressed further, well, the picture isn't as clear as it should be, and you just it's just going to be a less accurate replication of what's really going on. So are they perfect? Probably not, but I felt like I really got an idea of what was going on through those. Live mixing broadcasts and things like that. So, but I have watched some of the Pro Audio file mixing lessons and things like that. I don't know if I've listened to one in here, to be honest with you. I think I might have on a laptop one day, which is not ideal.
Right.
Totally not ideal. But, but if you know what you're listening on, if you know it really well, you should, I feel like, be able to pick up on certain things. You should, not that we mix on our laptops. I couldn't tell you in the middle of a mix, like, if that sounds right. Probably, I wouldn't trust that by any means. But, yeah, I don't know. It may just vary from broadcast to broadcast.
Yeah. And so for people who aren't familiar with the three mentors that you mentioned, what projects have they worked on? What artists?
So Joey Sturgis is kind of like the godfather of metalcore. He's worked with like Devil Wears Prada and Asking Alexandria. We Came as Romans, Muir. He's got a pretty solid body of work, and he's really helped shape that genre. A.L. Levy, he did a lot of work out of Audio Hammer. I don't know how much he does anymore, but he's worked with like the Black Dahlia Murder and August Burns Red and Devil Driver, and just a lot of quality stuff that's come out of Audio Hammer. And Joel Wanasek, he's kind of more of a radio rock guy, but he just worked on the new Machine Head, and he's worked with a band called Vinyl Theater, and a relatively known metalcore act, Phineas. He's worked on their stuff as well. So
Nice. Machine Head's got a new album coming out?
Yeah, if it already hasn't dropped, I believe so.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
God, I love those guys.
Yeah. So
I love those guys.
Yeah, Joel did a awesome job on that. It sounds really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
what projects are you currently working on?
so I just did a single for a band out of St. Louis called Weather Hill. They're kind of like a soulful rock kind of band. I'm pretty sure their stuff is fairly diverse. I've only got to work on one song, but I've heard some other stuff. There's sort of the arrangement is like piano, guitar, bass, drums, vocals. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. Probably going to try and get a draft out to them today of a mix. I'm finishing up that gent band from Italy. Let's see, what else am I working on? It's kind of been a slow past couple of months, so I've got a lot more work probably starting in the next couple of weeks coming. I'm going to be working more with Savage Land.
Nice.
Here in the next couple of weeks. I've got a couple of inquiries about some mixing and mastering and stuff like that. So they seem like pretty strong leads. So I'll have to see if that ends up working out or not. But just more rock and metal stuff.
Yeah. Was it tough to make the transition from like real metal into like putting a guitar or putting a piano in a mix?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily tough. I do try to practice on not just metal.
Yeah.
I try to work with other genres and things like that, and referencing definitely helps. Getting myself in the right headspace as far as what this genre sounds like, and what those tones are sounding like and things like that. I feel like at this point, as long as I can get in the right headspace and have a good idea of what I'm shooting for, I can definitely get it done. So it wasn't too hard at all. It's and I'm not done with the mix either, but I had a good idea of what I was going to do with it, and I was working on it last night, and it started coming together. I was feeling pretty good about it. So I'm definitely not scared to work on anything outside of metal or anything like that. In fact, metal is like probably some of the hardest stuff you can mix because everything's so fast. You're trying to control the low end. Distorted guitars are so easy to sound unpleasant.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fine detailed work. And I'm not as worried about, working on something with a little bit of a more open arrangement.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, more space to work with.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
remember this one time I'd never recorded an Americana band, and they came in and acoustic guitar, that was cool. Kick drum, that was cool. And then dude brought in a banjo.
Oh,
And I was like, I can just record it like an acoustic guitar, no problem.
yeah.
Holy shit, that was the biggest mistake I ever made.
Uh-huh.
Because I was like, oh my God, this is so harsh sounding. Well, what if I move the mic back here and I changed out mics? I probably spent like 3 hours micing it.
Wow.
And I didn't even get the sound that I wanted.
Yeah, that's tough, man. I've never recorded a banjo. Thinking about it now, like if I was going to be in that position where I was going to be recording an instrument I wasn't too familiar with, I would definitely try to do some research, and figure out the best I could,
Right.
proper miking techniques and things like that. And the other tough thing is too, though, you have to be careful where you get your information from. That's
okay.
huge.
Explain to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, because anybody can put up a YouTube video teaching you how to do some mixing, tutorial. Doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean that everything they're stating is fact. And I learned a lot from a forum, the Ultimate Metal forum, Andy Sneap. I learned a lot about mixing from that forum, and there's definitely some good stuff in there, and there's definitely some bad stuff, And so there's certain approaches and ideas that I adopted that do not serve my mixing style at all, And so maybe you find a YouTube video of somebody telling you mic it just like an acoustic guitar, and it could not be that way at all,
Right.
So that I value education like a lot, you know, and it's so great that there's professionals out there putting out, you know, professional content, and I would much rather pay, you know, a reasonable amount of money for a course on, or maybe like Graham Cochran from Recording Revolution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's got, you know, his Jumpstart series, which is amazing to teach you the fundamentals of recording certain instruments. Like, you know, when I started getting an acoustic guitar to record, I didn't really know exactly how to do it at first. And once I watched one of those, I was like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. And it sounded great. Like, I would be scared to go on YouTube and try to look up a tutorial.
How to record acoustic guitar.
You don't know what you're getting. Yeah. So I think it's definitely important to try and find, you know, quality education that is, you know, from somebody you feel like you can trust, because you're going to be so much better off, you know, learning that than either having to spend the time to learn it yourself and troubleshoot, or learning bad techniques from somebody and having to unlearn those, you know. So that's
absolutely.
huge.
Chapter 4.
So when you were first starting off, like when I first started going audio engineering, I bought every book that I could, and I just read. And then eventually got to the point where I was paying more attention to processes and mindsets of audio engineers by listening to interviews and podcasts and just seeing how they approach a project, and leaving the technical stuff aside. And when I started doing that, then the technical stuff started making a hell of a lot more sense to me. I don't know if you ran into this or...
Yeah, so I kind of did things pretty backwards. I don't know. I did the same thing with guitar. I tried to, you know, I'm self-taught on guitar, and I don't really know theory very well, or how to read music or anything like that. But, you know, I sure know how to read a guitar tab, and I can play along pretty well if the speed isn't too high. But, you know, sort of tried to do this self-taught thing with recording too. And it just was a slow process. It is anyway. You have to develop those skills. They take time. They really do. Would I have learned a lot faster if I would have tried to seek out professional help quicker? Absolutely. I totally would have. And, you know, I think that we've kind of all value different aspects more or less. I definitely would have leaned more towards, you know, the philosophical side of recording, sort of like you did, before the technical side, I feel like, as well. Now that I think about it, I think that is more true for me now, because I do sort of digest that stuff better, you know, the philosophical side. And then I think, you can put together the technical stuff better once you know the approaches, for sure.
So if you could go back to pre-awesome audio engineer Gabe Fry, would you do anything differently? Would you take the same path?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely invest in more education earlier on.
Would you go back to school for it?
I don't think I would go to school. Okay. I've definitely heard, you know, from a lot of sources that I trust that school doesn't really help you out that much. There's not anything in school that you can't learn online,
right? And
for much cheaper. And things are so different now than a lot of what's in a lot of those textbooks. You know, the focuses are much different nowadays, and the practices are different. And so if you can figure out what the pros are doing right now and just sort of get the meat and potatoes, I feel like that's a great way to sort of, you know, jumpstart you doing quality work.
I agree.
You know?
I agree, but I think the biggest thing is that someone like you who's very motivated, you'll sit down and do this for 8 hours a day.
Right.
For some people, it sounds real sexy to them, and then if they have to self-pace, then they'll tend to not do it. Where going to school, they're just like, they have to go because they've already paid the money.
If that's the case, it's then it may be for you. Everybody's different for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just don't think it's something you have to do,
right,
you know?
Right, to make it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I even hear from some of these professionals that getting a degree in audio engineering doesn't actually even help you get a job in a nice studio.
I hear the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all about product and connections.
Yeah, and experience.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you don't have any experience, you're just as, you know, valuable as somebody who's trying to learn on the internet, trying to, get it all together. So
Absolutely. Even working at a studio, I remember talking to some audio engineers a couple years ago, and one guy owns a studio downtown in Kansas City, and he's like, people hit me up all the time. They want to do internships. They want to work there. And so I ask him, I say, what clients can you bring to me? And if you can't bring any clients with you, probably not interested, because you still got to watch out for the bottom line.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I've had people ask me to do internships, and it's like, oh, I don't really need help. I actually need more work, So, if the time came.
And it will.
Yeah.
I think it will for you, man.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that, man. I'm definitely, confident it will too. But, where I could see value coming in for an intern maybe wouldn't necessarily be on the audio side, but on the advertising side.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see a scenario in the future where I would be open to an internship to have somebody help advertise for me while I'm recording, because that's just so big now.
Right.
It's like, how do you add value to me? I guess it's the same thing, right? It's like, who can you bring to me?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, different way of getting there, but it's the same headspace. Like, that's what I would find, valuable to in an intern or something like that.
So, do you still play guitar, drums?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Because you do covers, right?
Yeah, I would do that to put out content more so than anything. Like, I'm really not a drummer. I mean, like, I have I have a natural, I guess, gift for it. But it's not something that, I'm not nearly on the level of, fiddling around with drums as I am on guitar. But even guitar nowadays, I'm definitely rusty. I don't really play a whole lot. I don't know. I just kind of lost my love for it, as weird as that sounds. And it doesn't bum me out to say that or anything. It's just been a natural, progression. But, I'll definitely pick up my guitar. And, if I feel like, we aren't nailing a part in a session and there's just like, there's nothing else to do, then maybe I'll play it or something. Right. Or, I put out a couple of covers last month, just to put out some content out there and, keep my name out there a little bit kind of thing. Cause like I said, it's been a slow couple months, but, aside from that, I really don't play out, or play a whole bunch, anymore. But, I was doing, more a couple years ago when I was trying to do more of the songwriting thing for TV and film. And, it's really interesting because I actually just read an email recently that has me kind of double thinking this a little bit. But, a lot of times when I would send out, sorry, let me backtrack here a little bit. There's a website called musicxray.com, and they have a bunch of opportunities for songwriters,
to submit for like sync licensing.
Exactly. And so, I would send out, I'd send out songs to some of these companies, and sometimes you get like terrible feedback, like just automated message like, sorry, this song does not quite fit what we're going for or whatever. And you're just like, was that really that? Like, it seems like it would work pretty solid for this. But, and then other times it would say something like, the production quality isn't where we want it, and you listen to, some of the stuff that's got picked up and you're like, whoa, mine's not that far off from that.
Right.
Like, really? Like, and I did make a little bit of money on that site. I did have a publisher hire me to write a record for extreme sports stuff. And I didn't get paid a lot of money. I kind of just did it just to try to get my foot in the door. But, so I got this email a couple days ago from this guy who, let me see if I can find out what it's called. How to License Your Music. This guy, his name's Aaron. I can't remember his last name, but he sent this email out about should you pay to submit to music briefs. And he breaks down that he doesn't really think that these sites are necessarily worth investing in because the whole system doesn't really quite make sense that industry professionals would put out their needs for music because the inquiries would just be overwhelming, and the financial barrier to entry is so low on a lot of these sites that it probably wouldn't, empty the pipeline enough to make it, worthwhile. He has an example in here about like one professional got like over 2,000 inquiries or something like that for one opportunity. He was only able to go through like 20.
Yeah.
And so that's like,
and each person submitting is probably paying like $5 per submission or something like that.
They're usually about 20 at least. Yeah, like usually the lowest one is about $10. Well, this is for Music X-Ray anyway. And then you also have to pay
a yearly membership or something?
No, they have like you pay like something for diagnostics or something. So you pay like $10 for them to be able to basically run analytics on your track, how many times it's getting played.
Oh, okay.
And they try to guarantee that like 5 industry professionals will listen to it and rate it, which is kind of cool. But
depending on how you define industry professional.
Right, exactly. Yeah. There's that. And then this kind of makes me think like, well, how legitimate is it really? Like it's definitely not the best model if that many inquiries are getting in and I actually don't even get a chance. I have as much as a chance to submit to a freaking indie label or something and get my email read and, to try to get a record deal or something. So he believes in building relationships.
Absolutely.
With these, these reps for whatever company or whatever, which makes sense. And a lot of the books I've been reading on marketing nowadays and things like that is preaching the same thing. Today is about building authentic relationships, and so it can be difficult because as musicians, we're so passionate and it's so easy to get, just antsy and to want to, sell yourself and right away without building that relationship.
Right. The instant gratification too.
Right.
That we're all accustomed to.
100%.
Yeah, man. And I absolutely like sites like Music X-Ray, I'd say Hit License, Taxi, where you have to, I know Taxi, I think you have to have a yearly subscription and then you submit per.
Yeah.
I look at that stuff like I look at Sonic bids. In a sense, when people are applying for Coachella, if you're an independent band, you're applying for Coachella, you're paying, or South by Southwest, perfect example, $55. You're an independent band, you think that South by Southwest is going to pick you up through $55 when a million other bands are submitting for it, like, come on.
Right.
You don't see this as kind of like a money grab?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. Building relationships with music supervisors who are out looking for those tracks, because no matter, even if your song was super dope, if it doesn't fit the scene, it's going to get pushed aside immediately, right?
Exactly.
And so like a lot of these sites like Music X-Ray, they'll say, well, we want like this type of feel. Here's some examples. You can kind of write to it, but again, if it doesn't fit the scene, even if your example, like your song perfectly encompasses all those examples, it might not get picked.
Right, 100%. And the worst part is you can't even really get feedback,
right?
To make any necessary adjustments. And that's just the worst part. Sometimes you can, but it's just way more rare. They don't have time.
Right.
They don't have time to do that.
Exactly. 2,000 submissions, you're going to pick 20. There's no way you're going to type a paragraph for 2,000 people to give feedback.
Yeah, 100%.
Plus, a lot of the times, too, now, even with like music licensing, that's such a small portion of the overall budget, and it's getting reduced and reduced because you have companies like MTV that are going to say, hey, we're going to pay you $100, even though rightfully so, we should probably be paying you about 2,000 licenses a song. But guess what? You're going to get exposed to all these people on MTV. And it's like, well, 10 seconds of my song in Teen Mom isn't going to do shit for you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like they try to leverage that. Oh, you're going to get all these impressions and all people are going to listen to it. It's like, nah, that's not how it's going to work.
Right, exactly. And the more people actually take that offer, the more it's going to be prominent. Right. So like we have to, we have to take a stand and like, not compromise the value of our art for these tiny little paychecks like that don't have a payoff exposure wise.
Yeah, dude. And to kind of bring it full circle, same thing as an audio engineer.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people that are doing stuff for free, which is fine if it's your buddies, you're trying to get your foot in the door, but it's like, recognize what your value is.
Right.
And it's a hard discussion to have because some bands will hit you up, hey, I want you to do this. You're like, okay, cool, $100, $150, $400, $500. And they're like, I'm just going to go to my buddy who's free. And
right.
okay, do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to say no,
Right.
because you know that you're going to be able to put out something that's even better.
Right.
You got to get compensated for your time, or else we create that norm
Exactly.
where everyone expects free shit.
Right, exactly. And you also do value the value of your work.
Right.
And not just your work, but the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's putting out great work for, nickels, like, it's just everybody else has to compete, you know?
Right.
And so it's a disservice to the whole industry to be able to do that and to give into that. And so that's definitely been a battle for me, man, because I'm trying to price in a way that I think is appropriate for the quality I'm able to put out, but it's still affordable for a band. Not every band, but a band who truly wants a quality recording and is willing to invest in that, invest in themselves. That's the kind of person you want to work with anyway.
Right.
The clients that aren't willing to pay anything are usually the most painful clients to work with. They're never happy. They're impatient, and I'm not, trying to belittle anybody here or anything like that, but that's I remember hearing that for the first time, and I was just like, whoa, like that, I've just made the connection. It's certainly true for me. So, you definitely, it's a weird thing. The more you raise your prices, usually the more pleasant the client is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's exactly what you said. They're willing to take it more seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
When bands are like, hey, you want to record my demo? It's like, I don't want to do your demo.
Yeah,
I want to do your record.
Exactly. That's where I'm at, man. And I feel bad, because it's like, well, you're not, if somebody wants to come to me and record 3 songs in 8 hours, it's like, I'm not going to be happy with the finished product. You're probably not either. I hope you wouldn't be happy with that finished product, But I really don't have interest in that. And it's weird because I actually want to do a lot more for a little bit more money, and so yeah, it's definitely you do have to search for those clients that are willing to invest in themselves and in their music. But those are the bands that give themselves a shot.
Right.
And it's funny because I actually wasn't that band or that musician, when I was playing in a band, I was trying to figure out the recording thing as well. I did send out my stuff for mastering a couple of times, and I wasn't real stoked on the result that I got. But I think I definitely learned from that. I actually am going to be putting out it should be like a blog post because that's essentially what it is. But I'm just going to put it out on Facebook here soon about sort of a choosing your path kind of thing. So many people dabble. They sort of allow themselves to be distracted, to be a jack of all trades. They want to produce their own music, which is, that is just a mountain to climb. It takes 7 to 10 years to really get good at this. And do you have that kind of time in a band? I didn't. I burned out. And so I think it's important to focus on one path and really go down that, and stay committed to that path. Bands that try to record themselves, totally cool for demos, for writing, for all that kind of stuff. Go invest in yourself. Go record at a studio and get a quality product because standards are so different nowadays. Your subpar recording quality, not only do people who are scouting look negatively upon that, it was different back in the day, right? Like they could see the potential through the track. They're like,
they had money for A&R.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they don't. They want that finished, polished product.
Right.
When they sign you and put that shit out, and it's like, we're not going to lose any money on you. We're just going to only make money.
Right. Exactly. And so you have to invest in yourself so that others will invest in you. And so, that's something that I didn't get right and that a lot of bands aren't getting right. And I totally get it. Like, times are tough. Money is not flowing. But it certainly takes a different level of dedication. There's too many bands. Too many bands. You have to separate yourself in a lot of different ways, visually, sonically, And, social media, of course, is always going to be a big, proponent of qualifying yourself, I guess, for moving on to that next level. But, man, a lot of people sleep on their recordings for some reason. I don't get it. They'll pay for artwork.
Right.
But they won't pay to get their recordings, their music recorded properly. It's crazy.
Yeah, and how disappointing is that? It's like going to a convenience store, really wanting a Snickers, opening up the Snickers that you just bought and have it be like rotten and shitty.
Yeah.
It's like you see this amazing artwork, this band's really put together, they got super dope press photos, you put the CD in, and it just sounds like shit.
Yeah, it's so weird, man, isn't it? That's a weird thing. Like, the presentation looks good,
right.
and your expectations are not here. They're higher because the quality of the artwork.
Here's kind of my theory on that. I feel like as a musician, you innately feel like you understand how to record yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a musician tries to go do graphic design, I would say it's about 50-50, but like for me, it was like, I don't know anything about this. So I'm going to pay for this professional to do it. But then when you get into the audio world, it's like, well, I've been playing guitar for 10 years. We had a 4-track down in the practice studio space. We can just do this ourselves.
Right.
And it's like, no, you can't.
Yeah, it's a different world, man. It's a different world. Yeah, that's a funny thing is bands. The other thing I was going to say is I think there's like a fear of letting go of some control there.
Oh, dude, to me that's the biggest barrier.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one, because then I feel like a lot of musicians think that they're belittled, because it's like, yeah, your guitar solo didn't fit there. Maybe it didn't fit in the song. You're still a badass guitar player,
right.
But you got to do what's best for the song, not what is going to entertain you as a player, as opposed to entertaining the listener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And not only that, but even sonically, letting go of the control of letting an engineer maybe reamp their guitar tones and build the drum tones, and that again, that comes back to taste. Do you like this engineer's taste? If you do, and your stuff is recorded, if you got the fundamentals right, then you should be fine. Like, it's just a matter of, can you afford that person?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it can be difficult. You got to find somebody that you trust, and it takes trial and error. A lot of times bands go with the free guy, then they go with the guy who charges $100 a song, and then maybe a little more. It's just a process. I see that, but you got to let go of some of that control. But you have to be smart about the choice who you hire to do this track. Man, I would say probably at least half the bands like I have come in here and record were screwed over from the last engineer they had work on their stuff.
Really?
Yeah, like it's so common that the engineer they worked with before like abandoned the project and never gave them back their money.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I've heard that so many times. It blows my mind. Yeah.
Wow.
I know it. And or they paid all this money, like the end product doesn't sound that good. There was just all sorts of it was an apathetic engineer, Mm-hmm. It's like he just didn't care to put in the quality time and have a high quality control over the session to make sure it's all good, because once you compromise, your quality control, it's so easy for things to just keep going downhill. How much can I get away with? How much,
Right.
That's the biggest opportunity for me to stand out is that's a moral thing for me. Like, I can't do that to a band. I've lost songs. I had a hard, about a year and a half ago, I had a hard, something happened when I defragged my computer or something. I lost a whole folder of music.
Oh, shit.
And I had to go back and track these bands for free. I wasn't going to charge them.
Right.
But I've heard of engineers still charging people for that.
When they lost tracks, they went and they recharged them.
Yep.
What?
I know it. It blows my mind.
That is crazy, because I've done that before too.
Yeah.
And you just get that rock in your stomach, fuck.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst. It usually takes only one time, and then you figure it out.
And then you start making copies on 10 different external hard drives.
Oh my gosh, that was brutal. But at the same time, it was like
lesson learned too.
Yeah.
Never do it again.
Yeah, and I earned their trust more.
Right.
It's like, hey, I'm going to do the right thing here.
Right.
I'm not going to be like the last guy you worked with, and not make up for my mistake here.
Yeah.
So that's like when you hear about stuff like that, you're like, okay, I can stand out here. I can do the right thing because I want to. Like, all you got to do is put yourself in the shoes of that band. I mean, I've had, I've recorded at a nice studio and gotten subpar results and been super disappointed and spent a lot of money. And I remember how that feels. And my goal is to have a completely different experience here. One where, I don't have the sexiest room and all sorts of gear that's not going to be used but looks really nice. Like,
right.
I've got mine. I have such a concentrated setup that the stuff I have, I use on every session. And you're not paying extra money just because you're not paying for my other gear just lying around, kind of a thing. I focus on what matters, having high, consistent quality all the way throughout the record. And, that's where opportunity is lost. And that's where sessions just fall apart and potential isn't truly reached. And so that's like my goal with everything I'm working on is, I always say this, I feel like it's getting so cheesy to me, but like maximizing the potential of every recording I work on. That's my goal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, Aaron Crawford told me this, recording with him a long time ago. He was like, man, you got to do a good job. You got to be a stand-up guy because the band you're recording today, they may break up. Mm-hmm. They may go and form 5 other bands. Right. And then if they remember that you gave them a great experience and a great product, then you just got 5 new clients.
100%. That just happened to me. Band that I recorded an EP for, again, probably about a year and a half ago. We did a single, and then they split. Yeah. 5 guys. 4 of the 5 guys went to another band, and they're going to come back, And so that's like, perfect example. So, but that's totally true. Totally good point. You never know what's going to happen, but you want to make sure that their experience was solid enough that whatever happens, you're the guy that comes into mind.
Exactly. When they're telling their friends about their favorite audio engineer or someone who's easy to work with, you want your name to be right up there.
100%. Yep.
Yeah, man. Word of mouth is the strongest form of promotion.
For sure.
It is.
Sure.
Chapter 5.
Now, when you do this blog post, could you do me a huge favor and actually define what a producer is? Because I feel that a lot of people now think that if you're a producer, you write beats. It's like... No.
Yeah.
That's not what a producer does.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I could definitely do that. And I think that there is even, there's almost 2 or 3 different ideas of what a producer is. I think the truest form of a producer is somebody who helps with the songwriting more than anything, right? They're there to help with the... what's the word I'm looking for?
Arrangement,
exactly. And so it's not, and they'll definitely help direct with the sonics if they feel like something needs to be shaped a certain way or something like that. But they're not so much a mixer or a recording engineer or anything like that. They are developing the song, the arrangement, right?
Right, and they're making sure that you're staying on budget. They're making sure that you need to bring in a studio musician because something doesn't sound right, or if you got to add something here, or take that part out or rearrange it.
Right.
Like they're the orchestration for that project.
Almost like the director.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there people are like, I'm a producer. Oh, really? How much time you spend in the studio? Oh, I write beats and Fruity Loops. Like, Jesus. Come on, man.
Yeah, that word does get thrown around a little bit, but it's kind of weird because the lines get blurred too. Back in the day, recording engineers didn't, there was dedicated people to the different, processes of the recording. You had a recording engineer, you had a mixing engineer, and a mastering engineer. And those things, of course, still exist today, but the lines get blurred a lot because the budgets are getting so low that if you can do all 3 and throw on producing it, then, you could be any of those words, So the words get thrown around for sure.
And I feel like an audio engineer, so the guy sitting behind the board tracking you, I feel like that's a pretty easy role into mix engineer because you have the understanding. You might not understand all the post effects or the sizzle, I guess some people call it, but I can see that. I can see that person possibly rolling into a producer role because they've been around and they've been in so many sessions and they've absorbed so much further from the producer. But the mastering thing, I feel like to be a solid mastering engineer, like you have to devote your entire career because I feel like those guys can pick up like half a decibel of sound and some shit that I would never be able to hear. And it's just like a completely different craft. Where before, you know, I thought, oh yeah, mastering, I'll just put a limiter on this and we're good to go.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a different art, and one that is a specialty, you know, and it's the one I know the least about, but I can still master. Right. You know, like I've definitely learned from some different mastering engineers, and Joey and Joel, they both master their own records, and you know, so I've learned about, you know, different processes of what goes into a mastering change and those kinds of things, and you know what those guys do and stuff like that. And so it's your master certainly is only as good as your mixes,
right?
Because you know, if your balances are off and things are off sonically, you're working with a 2-bus, everything consolidated to one file, and you have limitations when it comes to molding that, because especially in that state, everything is much more sensitive.
Right. Because you're doing it on the entire product, not individual instruments.
Right.
Yeah.
And unless you're stem mastering, which is more limited than a mix, of course, but at least you can turn up the kick drum and the snare and or whatever you have, you know, maybe if it's just the drums or whatever. But one of the best parts about the different processes, though, is the objectivity of everybody.
Right.
So you have the recording engineer who's objective to the band, and then you have the mixing engineer who's objective to the recording engineer, and the mastering engineer objective to the mixing engineer. So you're getting different, you know, layers of objectivity to keep, you know, and you get closer. Everybody further down the line is going to spend less time probably on the mix, and it's going to be closer to a first-time listener. Right. So that's the beauty of it. If it can be done well, if all three can work together well, you know, then that's definitely a thing of beauty.
And I'd even say choosing your mastering engineer needs to be just as important. If the person recording and mixing it for you isn't going to master it,
yeah,
that's just as important to listen to what their references are.
Oh, 100%.
Because I did a mix and I sent it off to a mastering engineer these guys wanted to go with, and he completely just like removed all of my low end. I'm sure there was good reason why he did it, but I heard them because the band sound. I was like, can I just listen to it after it's been mastered? And it was like 180 degrees from my mix, and I was like, fuck, take my name off this because it sounds like shit.
Yeah, that sucks, dude. A perfect example too is that record I did for the TV and film. They wanted to have somebody else master it, and that guy blew it. Like, you know, like you could tell he just wasn't a metal guy or something, but it was so harsh and muddy compared to my master, and I was just like, why'd you had my masters, like,
right,
like why would you take this? And I don't know how much that had to do with, like, you know, the track's not really placing a whole lot. I actually just recently saw they were placed a couple of times on TV, but so at least they got on TV.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. But I'm sure the mastering had something to do with it, because by itself, it's already just going to like sound like it just doesn't represent quality. It's just not quality.
Right.
So I don't know who would want that, you know, associated with whatever they're doing, but yeah, it's huge, man. It is massive. I mean, yeah, you have to do some research and figure out. There's a great site called Noise Creators. My buddy Jesse Cannon runs that with another guy. I can't remember.
It's just noisecreators.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and their whole thing is they try to link up artists with big-time producers, or sorry, I use that word too. I'll be honest. With recording engineers or mixing engineers and mastering, whatever. And it's by location, or you can search by what band. And they have a really awesome system. You can say, I love the way this record sounded. Who did that? You put in the band, you can see who did it. Yeah,
that's
really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for mastering, you can figure out, you know, they don't have everybody, but you know, they have a lot of people on there, and you know, you can kind of figure out, because that information isn't all that well known. It's not all, you know.
There's only a couple of like allmusic.com.
Yeah.
Maybe that one, or just go into the actual sleeve of the CD or the record.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not publicly out there. You're right.
Right. Yeah, which is kind of a shame, you know, because and especially with how digital things are going, it's just like, how do you find out who did what? You know, so there's got to be system in place for people to be able to get credit for the work they did.
Absolutely. One of my last questions, have you ever mixed and mastered for broadcast?
No.
Because I hear that, and this could be completely wrong, I believe I read this somewhere online, but it could be a false site, but they actually have standards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where like in the audio world, there's no standards. So I throw in this CD, I throw in this CD, it sounds completely different, got to change the EQ in my car, but for broadcast, all the same.
Yeah, well, I know as far as volume wise,
Yeah.
that's true. There's some different metering that you use for broadcasting than you will for just a regular music record or whatever. So I knew that was different, but yeah, I've never personally worked with it.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be doing some broadcast ready music, and I just need to figure out how the hell that all works.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I know. Well, if you can figure out the metering, like what the standards are as far as volume for that, then you should be in good place as far as volume goes. I don't know about like EQ or anything like that, how stringent that is there or anything. But I knew there was different metering and levels for volume for broadcast. So there's like Ozone, I believe, has...
Oh, Isotope?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that plugin.
Yeah, I believe that has the metering for broadcasting. Another one is, let's see, I'll look it up here. It's, well, actually, you know what? They introduced a monthly, that was it right there. This guy right here, I believe, is made for broadcasting. Yep. Designed to meet the requirements of the global broadcast and media industry.
Oh.
Yeah. So this would be one to look at for sure. And they have a monthly subscription thing. So it's pricey if you buy it, but you might be able to get around that with...
Oh, so you can buy it and then you can like rent it month by month.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which would be...
perfect for the situation that I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good option.
So that's a good way of doing it because I just upgraded my good way of selling plugins because I just upgraded my Mac and I tried to get the new Pro Tools and it's only subscription based.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was like, this is bullshit.
Dang.
I want to be able to have the option to own the software.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had mixed feelings about, the subscription stuff. Now, it makes sense when there's real benefits to it, right? As opposed to just going to subscription because it's cheaper. Like the Slate stuff, they're coming out with all sorts of new plugins.
Yes. If you can get the new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Like I owned everything they had before the subscription started. And now I'm just doing the subscription because they come out with a new plugin every 2 or 3 months. And it's always good stuff.
But do they give you the option to buy a plugin that you really like?
Yeah, you do still have the option.
Yeah,
Yep.
so being able to have that option,
That's
I'm
true.
100% down with.
Yeah, for sure, man. So it's interesting. It was interesting to see this company go to the monthly. Oh, and Waves just did a monthly thing on. I think it might be their silver bundle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely not a bad way to get some of those plugins if you need them too. But
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
for sure.
Well, dude, so where can people find you online?
You can find me on my website, www.kimura, Kimura Recordings.com. Same URL for Facebook, www.facebook.com/Kimura Recordings. Sorry. And then if anybody wants to add me on my personal page, I believe it's facebook.com/Gabe Fry, like the Primus record. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So.
When I think of your last name, I think of Futurama.
Oh, yeah. I get that a lot too. Yeah. Classic. I like The Simpsons a lot more than Futurama. So.
Yeah. I did until all the writers went to Futurama and they got new writers. Like I've been watching a couple Simpsons episodes like a couple years back. I'm like, okay, it's starting to get funny again. But I don't know. In my opinion, there was a significant duration of Simpsons just not being funny.
Oh, I wouldn't argue with that for a second. Like once you get up to like season 8, 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those. Yeah. When those old writers left, it's not the same. But that's what I mean by The Simpsons. It's like the old stuff. Yeah. I don't watch the new stuff anymore by any means, but I don't know. I just never really could get too much into Futurama.
You like Futurama?
Yeah.
Oh man, a lot of it is because I'm an engineer by trade, so like math, I had to take a ton of math in college, and so like their jokes. Because my wife watches it and she's like, this shit is not funny. But they're making like these mathematic jokes that like only a couple people would get. But I'm laughing my goddamn ass off.
Yeah, I might have to watch that more of it then because, yeah, if there's some kind of like, intellectual comedy, I may not meet the minimum requirements there. Who knows? But
you'd get it, dude. You just got to pay attention. What I need to let you do is borrow those 3 movies that they made. So they were on TV, right? Then they like dropped off. They lost their contract. They made these movies that got them real popular and got them back on Comedy Central.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's 3 of them, and dude, every Futurama episode I've enjoyed thoroughly.
Just at all, or just from that point, or
so all of them.
Oh, okay.
All of them, dude. They're just they're so clever. But yeah, so they were on. I think it was Fox.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then Fox dropped them, and then they kind of got some buzz underground, kind of like what Family Guy did when Fox dropped them. They got a lot of grassroots push.
Sure.
So they put out these 3 DVDs that are like movies. And then that kind of got the popularity back, got that grassroots push, and then Comedy Central picked it up for, I don't know, 6 or 7 seasons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's a good comeback.
God damn, I love that show.
Yeah, I'll have to give it another shot. I've got Hulu. I wonder if it's on there.
Yeah, probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably is.
I'll have to give it more of a shot.
Very cool, man. Well, thank you again for sitting down and talking to me about this.
Yeah.
Definitely to have you back on for the next season because you're just getting better, man. And I appreciate your grind and I appreciate like your knowledge of learning and just what you're doing for the scene is just super awesome.
Oh, I appreciate that so much, man. And happy to be back anytime, man. So
very cool.
Awesome.